Thank you for having me, Jen. Well, we survived because of the strength and resiliency of the Capitol officers and the political leaders who insisted that we go back in and count the Electoral College votes. And then everybody, all Americans across the political system, Republicans and Democrats, who rejected Trump's attempts to impose a coup in the 2020 election, like Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger in Georgia, who said no, he was not just going to go ahead and find thousands of votes that didn't exist for Trump. So there were a lot of people who stood up. The problem now is that Trump has purged a lot of the Raffensperger-type officials from the voting process. He's consolidated his hold over the Republican Party, and he's now embraced an explicitly authoritarian program. You know, when he ran back in 2016 and had never served in office before, a lot of people were saying, hey, this is a guy who's spoken about supporting national health care. This is a guy who is for LGBTQ rights. We don't know what to expect. Well, we know exactly what he has in mind for us this time, because it is an explicitly authoritarian program he's advancing for the country. He's bragging about essentially having packed and stacked the Supreme Court with these right-wing justices who have extinguished Roe versus Wade and are now on a full-blown campaign to strip women of reproductive freedom in the country. He's talking about getting rid of civil servants in the Department of Justice and the FBI, replacing them with his partisan hacks, and then taking over Democratic cities and imposing his own law enforcement agenda. And we know what kind of corruption and anti-democratic moves he's capable of. So, you know, we are in the fight of our lives again. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. And so everybody in America who wants to stand up for constitutional democracy and freedom must recognize this as a moment of maximum emergency. Now, the good news, Jen, is the vast majority of Americans reject what Donald Trump and the Republican Party is now selling. The problem is that they have every anti-democratic trick in the book, beginning with the gerrymandering of congressional districts, the hijacking of the Supreme Court by preventing people like the current Attorney General from even getting a hearing when he was nominated, when Merrick Garland was the chief of the D.C. Circuit. We see it in the suppression of voting rights, the manipulation of the Electoral College, and so on. So we have all of the anti-democratic institutions and practices that the Republican Party has mastered against the vast majority will. And the gun safety issue is a great case and study of this, because more than 90% of the people support a universal background check before violent criminals can get guns, and yet we're completely stymied by the GOP and the NRA's stranglehold over the political process, and that's the struggle that we're in today.
4 members of the Proud Boys were just convicted of seditious conspiracy this week, and in their defense, they all pointed the finger at the former president. Is it conceivable that Special Counsel Jack Smith could be considering seditious conspiracy charges against Trump?
Absolutely. I mean, that's not a defense. I mean, if you're accused of conspiracy to overthrow the government or put down the government of the United States, which is what seditious conspiracy means, it's not a defense to say somebody else told me to do it or somebody else was involved in the conspiracy. Trump could very much have been part of the Proud Boys or the Oath Keepers conspiracy, or he might have been involved in an overlapping concentric ring conspiracy with those conspiracies. So we don't have a system of justice, I hope, as I said at the January 6 hearings, where the foot soldiers and the ringleaders down below go to jail and the ringleaders above get a free pass and get to continue their insurrectionist assault on democratic institutions. So, you know, we've seen a lot of justice take place here. The Department of Justice has been doing an excellent job. More than 1,000 arrests, hundreds of convictions have taken place. More than a dozen people have been convicted of seditious conspiracy, completely refuting those who said, well, how could this be an insurrection if nobody was trying to overthrow the government? Well, now they have their answer. More than a dozen people have been convicted of that. And Donald Trump, of course, was impeached by a 232-vote margin in the House for inciting insurrection against the Union, and 57 of 100 senators agreed that he had incited an insurrection against the Union. We didn't reach the magic two-thirds number to convict the president, and yet we have robust concurrent majorities of both houses of Congress declaring that that's precisely what he did as a matter of constitutional fact.
I was very moved by the comments of Ms. Mason, the comments that followed hers, but I think the burden of their statements was simply that politicians try to get the media to do their will all the time. And I cheerfully concede to that proposition. In fact, we proved that in the last hearing when we showed that Donald Trump on numerous occasions tried to get Twitter to take down people's material that he considered offensive. A famous actress called him a PAB. I won't spell it out in the interest of modesty, but he didn't like that. And then the White House repeatedly called Twitter to say, take it down. He tried to get Disney to take down the comments and to admonish and castigate certain late-night comedians who he didn't like. So if the point is, as my friend from South Carolina was saying, well, this goes way beyond Twitter and Facebook, certainly it does. This problem goes way beyond it, and that's why the majority needs to think long and hard about going down this road.